The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty Afghan village as Navy SEAL medic Jake Morrison checked his medical supplies one final time. His team had been tasked with a routine patrol through the mountain village of Khost Province, where intelligence suggested Taliban fighters had been moving weapons through the area. Jake had served 3 tours already, but something felt different about this mission. As the 8-man team moved through narrow alleyways between mud brick houses, children watched from doorways while their mothers quickly ushered them inside. The village seemed too quiet for a Tuesday morning. Jake's training had taught him to trust his instincts. And right now, those instincts were screaming that something was wrong. The team leader, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, signaled for the squad to take a short break near an abandoned marketplace. Jake used the opportunity to scan the area through his scope, looking for anything unusual. That's when he spotted her, a young Afghan woman, maybe 20 years old, limping badly as she tried to cross the open square about 200 meters away. What caught Jake's attention wasn't just her obvious injury, but the way she moved. Despite her limp, there was something deliberate about her steps, something that reminded him of military training. Most civilians in the area would avoid open spaces when American soldiers were present. Yet she seemed to be heading directly toward their position. Before Jake could alert his team leader about the woman, the world exploded around him. The IED had been buried beneath a pile of old vegetables in the marketplace, and the blast was massive enough to shatter windows 3 blocks away. Jake felt himself thrown backward, his ears ringing so loudly he couldn't hear his own screams. When the dust settled and Jake's vision cleared, he realized he was trapped under a collapsed wooden beam. His left shoulder felt like it was on fire, and he could taste blood in his mouth. Through the smoke and debris, he could see 2 of his teammates lying motionless about 20 feet away. Rodriguez was calling for a head count, but Jake could barely make out his voice over the persistent ringing in his ears. That's when Jake saw her again. The same young woman was now much closer, maybe 50 meters away, and she was no longer limping. In fact, she was moving with the fluid precision of someone with advanced combat training. She had what appeared to be a rifle slung across her back, and she was scanning the area with the systematic attention of a trained soldier. Jake tried to call out to warn his teammates, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. He watched in growing alarm as the woman began to move tactically from cover to cover, using the smoke from the explosion as concealment. This was no ordinary civilian caught in the crossfire. This was someone who knew exactly what she was doing. As Jake struggled to free himself from the debris, he realized that the IED explosion might have been just the beginning of their problems. The woman was now close enough that he could see her face clearly, and what he saw there wasn't fear or confusion. It was the cold, calculating expression of someone executing a well-planned mission. The sound of additional explosions echoing from other parts of the village confirmed Jake's worst fears. They hadn't just walked into a simple IED trap. They had walked into a carefully orchestrated ambush. And the woman moving toward them was likely one of the key players in whatever was about to happen next. Jake knew he had to get free and help his wounded teammates. But as he looked at the woman advancing on their position, he also knew they were all in far more danger than they had realized. Jake finally managed to push the wooden beam off his chest, ignoring the sharp pain that shot through his injured shoulder. His medical training kicked in as he quickly assessed his own condition: possible dislocated shoulder, minor cuts from shrapnel, but nothing that would prevent him from functioning. His teammates needed him, and that took priority over everything else. Rodriguez was shouting orders to the remaining team members who were still conscious. 2 soldiers were down and unresponsive, while another was clutching his leg where blood was seeping through his uniform. Jake grabbed his medical kit and began crawling toward the nearest wounded soldier, keeping low to avoid any potential sniper fire. As he worked to stop the bleeding on Private Chun's leg wound, Jake kept glancing up to track the woman's movement. She had now positioned herself behind an overturned cart about 30 meters away, and she seemed to be waiting for something. Her behavior was becoming more puzzling by the minute. "Doc, we've got movement on all sides," Rodriguez called out, using Jake's nickname. "Looks like we're surrounded." I've called for extraction, but it's going to be at least 20 minutes before the helicopters can reach us. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours when you were trapped in an ambush zone. Jake finished applying a tourniquet to Chun's leg and moved to check on the two unconscious soldiers. The first one, Sergeant Williams, had a pulse but wasn't responding to verbal commands. Jake suspected a serious concussion from the blast. The second soldier was in much worse condition. Corporal Davis had taken shrapnel to his chest and was having difficulty breathing. Jake immediately began working to stabilize his airway and control the bleeding, but he knew Davis needed surgery soon if he was going to survive. While Jake worked on Davis, he noticed something strange happening. The woman who had been positioned behind the cart was now moving again, but instead of advancing on their position or retreating, she seemed to be circling around to their left flank. Even stranger, Jake could hear gunfire coming from that direction, but it didn't sound like it was aimed at them. "Rodriguez, you hearing that?" Jake called out between compressions on Davis's chest. "Sounds like someone's engaging hostiles on our left side." Rodriguez listened for a moment, his expression confused. "Yeah, I hear it. But our backup isn't supposed to be here for another 15 minutes. Who the hell is shooting out there?" Jake had a growing suspicion, but it seemed too unlikely to be true. As he continued treating Davis, he kept watching the woman's movement patterns. She wasn't behaving like someone trying to attack them. Instead, she seemed to be positioning herself to defend their flank. The confirmation came when Jake heard shouting in what sounded like Pashto, followed by a burst of automatic gunfire from the woman's position. Through the smoke, he could see muzzle flashes as she engaged targets that Jake couldn't see from his position. "I think she's fighting with us, not against us," Jake called out to Rodriguez. His voice filled with disbelief. Rodriguez looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Doc, you took a pretty good hit to the head in that blast? That woman could be Taliban for all we know." But Jake's medical training had taught him to observe details that others might miss, and everything about the woman's movement and positioning suggested she was trying to help them. The question was why? And more importantly, could they trust her? As the gunfire intensified around their position, Jake realized they might not have a choice. With two soldiers critically wounded and the rest of them pinned down by enemy fire, any help might be the difference between making it home and becoming casualties in a foreign war. The woman suddenly appeared at the edge of their position, moving in a low crouch. Up close, Jake could see that her clothing was torn and bloodied, and there were obvious signs that she had been in combat for some time. But what struck him most was her eyes. They held the same determined focus he'd seen in seasoned combat veterans. Jake stared at Zara for a long moment, her question echoing in his mind. The sounds of distant gunfire continued around them, but in that instant everything seemed to slow down. He thought about his oath as a medic, to do no harm, to preserve life above all else. Then he thought about his duty as a soldier, to follow orders, to protect his team. "I've been trained to save lives," Jake finally answered. "Sometimes that means making the hard choice." Rodriguez saw the determination in Jake's eyes and knew he was about to lose this argument. "Doc, if you go with her and something happens, I can't help you." "We'll be gone when you get back." Jake nodded, understanding the consequences. "Then I guess I better make sure I get back before you leave." He turned to Zara. "How far is this clinic?" 6 minutes if we move fast, but is dangerous. Taliban fighters still in area?" She looked at Davis, who was now barely conscious. "We must go now." Jake quickly gathered his essential medical supplies and helped Zara lift Davis onto an improvised stretcher made from a wooden door they found in the rubble. The weight of the unconscious soldier made movement difficult, but Zara proved surprisingly strong for her size. As they prepared to leave, Chun grabbed Jake's arm with his good hand. "Doc, you sure about this?" "No," Jake admitted. "But I'm sure Davis will die if we don't try." Zara led them through a maze of narrow alleyways, moving with the confidence of someone who knew the area intimately. She would stop at each corner, listen carefully, then signal for them to continue. Jake was impressed by her tactical awareness. She clearly had received extensive combat training. They encountered their first Taliban fighters after about 3 minutes of travel. Zara spotted them first, three armed men moving through a parallel street. She motioned for Jake to stop, then carefully maneuvered to get a better view of their position. "They no see us yet," she whispered. "But they block direct path to clinic. We must go around." The detour added precious minutes to their journey, and Jake could see that Davis was deteriorating rapidly. His skin was becoming pale and clammy, classic signs of shock from blood loss. Jake tried to start another 4 while they moved, but it was nearly impossible to hit a vein while carrying a stretcher through rough terrain. "Zara, we need to stop for a minute. I have to get some fluids into him." She looked around nervously. "It's dangerous to stop, but okay, 1 minute only." Jake worked quickly to establish an IV line, using skills he had practiced hundreds of times in training. But doing it under combat conditions, with someone's life hanging in the balance, felt completely different from any simulation he had experienced. As Jake worked, Zara kept watch for threats. "Your friend?" she said quietly. "He have family?" "Wife and 2 kids," Jake replied, not looking up from his work. "Little girls, 3 and 5 years old." Zara was quiet for a moment. "My father, he always say that saving one life is like saving whole world. Is worth any risk?" Jake successfully inserted the 4 and began running fluids. "Your father sounds like he was a good man." "He was. Taliban kill him because he treat American soldiers. They say he was traitor to Afghanistan." She looked at Jake directly. "But he say helping people is never betraying anything. Is being human." They resumed moving toward the clinic, but Jake couldn't stop thinking about what Zara had just told him. Her father had died for helping American soldiers, yet here she was, risking her life to help them again. It was a level of courage and forgiveness that Jake wasn't sure he could match. They reached the clinic entrance after what felt like hours, but had actually been only 8 minutes. The building looked abandoned from the outside, but Zara led them to a concealed entrance in the back. As they descended into what appeared to be a basement, Jake could see that it was actually a well-equipped medical facility. An elderly Afghan man emerged from one of the rooms, and Zara spoke to him rapidly in Pashto. He looked at Davis, then at Jake, and nodded grimly. "Dr. Rashid speaks some English," Zara explained. "He was surgeon in Kabul before war. Now he help anyone who need, no matter what side they fight for." Dr. Rashid examined Davis quickly and efficiently. "Hemothorax," he said in accented English. "Blood in lung cavity. Need immediate surgery to stop bleeding." Jake felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. Relief that they had found qualified help for Davis, but anxiety about whether they could trust these people completely. Everything in his training told him to be suspicious of the situation, yet everything in his heart told him that Zara and Dr. Rashid were genuinely trying to help. Dr. Rashid was already preparing for surgery. "You are medic, yes?" he asked Jake. "I need assistant. Can you help?" Jake looked at Zara, who nodded encouragingly. "He is good doctor. He saved many lives here." As Jake prepared to scrub in for surgery, he realized that Zara's question earlier had been more profound than he had initially understood. This wasn't just about choosing between orders and medical ethics. This was about choosing between fear and trust, between suspicion and hope, between seeing enemies and seeing fellow human beings who wanted to help. The woman dropped to one knee beside Jake, her rifle ready but pointed away from the American soldiers. Up close, Jake could see that she was younger than he had initially thought, probably no more than 19 or 20. But her movements had the confidence of someone with extensive military training. "American doctor?" she asked in heavily accented English, gesturing toward Jake's medical kit. Jake nodded, never stopping his work on Davis's chest wound. "Yeah, I'm a medic." "Who are you?" Instead of answering, she pointed toward the unconscious Sergeant Williams. "Head injury. Very bad. Need hospital quick." Her assessment was accurate, which surprised Jake. Most civilians wouldn't know how to properly evaluate a traumatic brain injury. Yet this woman had identified Williams's most serious problem within seconds of seeing him. "You have medical training?" Jake asked as he worked to insert a 4-line into Davis's arm. The woman nodded grimly. "Some training. My father was doctor before Taliban kill him. She paused, scanning the area for threats before continuing. I learn from him. Also learn other things. Rodriguez had been listening to their conversation while coordinating with the helicopter extraction team. Jake, we need to move in 5 minutes. Can you stabilize them for transport? Jake looked at his two most seriously wounded teammates. Williams was still unconscious but breathing steadily, while Davis's condition remained critical. Davis needs more work, but Williams should be okay to move. The woman suddenly grabbed Jake's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Your friend with chest wound. He needs surgery now. Too much blood inside. Jake had reached the same conclusion, but hearing it confirmed by someone else made the situation feel even more desperate. The helicopters will have a surgical team, he told her. She shook her head. No time, he died before helicopter come. She looked directly into Jake's eyes. I know place. Safe place with doctor. Very close. Rodriguez overheard and immediately objected. Absolutely not. We're not going anywhere with someone we don't know. That could be a trap. But Jake was looking at the woman's face, studying her expression the way he'd been trained to read patients, who might not be telling him the truth about their symptoms. What he saw there wasn't deception or hostility. It was genuine concern for Davis's survival. Where? Jake asked her. Underground clinic. 2 streets from here. My people help American soldiers before. Is safe. She hesitated for a moment before adding, but you must trust me. Jake looked down at Davis, whose breathing was becoming more labored despite everything Jake had done for him. The 4 fluids weren't enough to compensate for the internal bleeding, and Jake knew she was right about the timing. Davis would likely die before the helicopters arrived. Rodriguez? She's right about Davis. He's not going to make it to the extraction point. Doc, I can't risk the entire team on the word of someone we just met. The woman seemed to understand their dilemma. She reached into her vest and pulled out what appeared to be a military identification card, though it was blood-stained and partially damaged. I'm Zara Ahmed. Afghanistan National Army, combat medic, 3rd class. Jake studied the identification card. It looked authentic, though he wasn't expert enough to be certain. More importantly, everything about her behavior suggested she was telling the truth about her military background. Zara, Jake said, using her name for the first time. If you're NA, where's the rest of your unit? Her expression darkened. Dead, all dead. Taliban attack our outpost 3 days ago. I only one escape. She looked down at Davis. I know what it's like to watch friends die. I no want to watch more. Jake made his decision. Rodriguez, I'm taking Davis to her clinic. It's his only chance. Doc, that's an order. We stick together. But before Jake could respond, Zara asked the question that would change everything. You, she said, looking directly at Jake. American soldier doctor. You have training for combat medicine, yes? But have you been trained for this kind of battle? The battle where you must choose between following orders and saving life? The question hit Jake like a physical blow. In all his training, in all the scenarios they had practiced, no one had ever prepared him for a moment like this. Medical ethics said he should do everything possible to save Davis's life. Military protocol said he should follow Rodriguez's orders and wait for extraction. Jake looked at Davis, then at Zara, then back at Rodriguez. In that moment, he realized that some battles aren't fought with weapons. They're fought with impossible choices that no amount of training can prepare you for. The underground clinic's operating room was surprisingly well equipped, though Jake could see that most of the medical equipment was older models, probably donated or salvaged from various sources. Dr. Rashid worked with the efficiency of someone who had performed countless emergency surgeries under difficult conditions. Shrapnel, pierce lung and damage artery. Dr. Rashid explained as he made the initial incision. Must remove metal pieces and repair bleeding vessel. Is complex surgery but possible? Jake assisted by maintaining Davis's airway and monitoring his vital signs while Dr. Rashid worked. Despite the primitive conditions compared to a modern American hospital, The Afghan surgeon's skills were immediately apparent. His hands moved with the precision and confidence that only came from years of experience. Zara remained in the operating room, helping by anticipating what instruments Dr. Rashid would need next. Jake was struck by how seamlessly she worked with the doctor, as if they had performed many surgeries together before. "How long have you two been running this clinic?" Jake asked during a brief pause in the surgery. 6 months, Dr. Rashid replied without looking up from his work. "After Taliban destroy hospital and village, we create this place. Help anyone who need medical care? Anyone?" Jake pressed. "Including Taliban fighters?" Zara answered this time. "Dr. Rashid say wounded person is just wounded person. No Taliban, no American, no Afghan army, just human being who need help." Jake thought about the implications of what they were saying. This underground clinic was treating enemies and allies alike, making no distinctions based on politics or military affiliation. It was an almost impossible level of neutrality to maintain in an active war zone. "Isn't that dangerous?" Jake asked. "Both sides must see you as potential threats." Dr. Rashid paused his work to look at Jake directly. "Everything is dangerous in war. But choosing to help people instead of kill people, this gives meaning to life even when world has no meaning." As the surgery continued, Jake began to understand that this clinic represented something he had never encountered in his military service. It was a place where the normal rules of warfare didn't apply, where medical ethics took precedence over military objectives. Davis's condition began to stabilize. As Dr. Rashid successfully removed the largest pieces of shrapnel and repaired the damaged blood vessel, Jake monitored the improved oxygen levels in Davis's blood with a sense of relief he hadn't felt since the initial explosion. "Your friend will live," Dr. Rashid announced after nearly 2 hours of surgery. "But he need rest for several days before he can travel safely." Jake felt the weight of this news. His team would be long gone by now, either evacuated successfully or moved to a different position. He was effectively stranded in enemy territory with a wounded teammate who couldn't be moved immediately. "I need to contact my unit," Jake said. "Let them know Davis is alive and stable." Zara shook her head. "No radio contact from here. Taliban monitor all frequencies. Is too dangerous." Jake realized he was facing another impossible choice. He could try to move Davis back to American-controlled territory and risk killing him, or he could stay in the clinic and hope his team would eventually find them. "There is third option," Dr. Rashid said, as if reading Jake's thoughts. "We have way to send message to American base. Not radio. Is safer method. What kind of method?" Zara explained. "We have contact in village who work with American intelligence. He can carry message but take time. Maybe one day?" Jake looked at Davis, who was now sleeping peacefully after the surgery. The color had returned to his face and his breathing was strong and regular. Dr. Rashid had undoubtedly saved his life. "Why are you helping us?" Jake asked both of them. "After everything that's happened between our countries, why risk your lives for American soldiers?" Dr. Rashid cleaned his surgical instruments while he considered the question. "My son was killed by American drone strike 3 years ago. He was 14 years old, walking to school." Jake felt his stomach drop. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. But my son, he always wanted to be doctor like his father. He wanted to help people, save lives. When I help you save your friend, I honor my son's memory. I do what he would want me to do." Zara added her own perspective. "My father teach me that hatred only make more hatred. But helping people, saving lives, this can make peace even in middle of war." Jake looked around the clinic, seeing it with new eyes. These people had every reason to hate Americans, yet they had chosen to help instead. They had created a sanctuary where compassion was more powerful than politics, where healing was more important than revenge. As Jake settled in for what would likely be a long night watching over Davis, he realized that Zara's original question had led him to discover something profound. Sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with weapons or tactics. They're fought with choices about who we decide to become in the face of impossible circumstances. Outside, the sounds of war continued. But inside the underground clinic, three people from different worlds had found a way to create something beautiful together. The simple act of saving a life.